Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Nope. This film was written and directed by Jordan Peele. This is his third film, and little by little I've seen him kind of feel out the cinematic landscape and find his voice, and he's taken, interesting directions that I initially didn't imagine, when I saw his first film, Get Out. Get Out is very straightforward, it's very well structured, and it's satisfying just as a story in terms of the writing. And I think it balances all of the themes very, very well, perhaps the best, I think. Though for me, even at the time, I did feel that maybe it was a little bit too straightforward. I felt like it didn't quite have a really bold aesthetic and like an interesting directorial style. But, I could forgive him because, of course, it was just his first film and he could figure all that out later. But, of course, Get Out was a huge, huge success, and it absolutely touched a nerve with people. And I think when that happens, it's a wonderful thing, but it's also a really scary thing because it is very tough to kind of recreate that sort of feeling. I always felt like if you combine something like Get Out, which is very balanced, and then combine it with something that is a little bit more sophisticated in aesthetic, like, his second film, Us, I feel like you would have a really great movie, or a movie that's really satisfying for me, because Us, in terms of the mood and everything, it just excels in all the ways that Get Out did not for me. And yet I still feel like it fell short in a lot of ways because it's trying to tackle so many different things that have to do with social commentary, everything from class structure, race, and it's satirical. And I think all of that is very biting at times, very funny, but I think the abstractions in it are a little bit too stray. And I feel like we're left with too many loose ends and it gets a little bit confusing. And the conclusion to me is ultimately very silly and not quite thought through, which cheapens the overall effect for me. But now we have Nope, and that's a fantastic title. And yet again, he's doing something that I did not expect from him. He's still weaving in a lot of kind of the social ideas into the film, but more here he's emphasizing the meta exploration of cinema and illusions and how all of that relates to the human experience, but he is packaging that in the form of a spectacle in the form of like a summer blockbuster movie. The term spectacle is used in this film very pointedly, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I think Peele just has a lot of knowledge of film, and that comes through very strongly, but in particular he has a lot of knowledge of the horror genre, and a lot of that is existing in the details and just little things that you see in the background. And I also think that he's really ambitious, and I do admire that, certainly to a degree. And while I do feel that maybe at times he's biting off more than he can chew, and he's kind of tackling a lot of things where I don't feel like it's fully focused, I do find this film to be entertaining. But no, this is more of a sci-fi type of thing. This is an alien invasion film that is ripe with all kinds of little postmodern touches. It's like kind of meta, very academic portrait of escapism, as I said. But because this is Jordan Peele, it's going to be subverted. So we are now seeing all of this through the eyes of somebody that is unlikely, somebody that might have existed in the shadows of maybe the old Hollywood system. So that social aspect of regaining something, I think, is very apparent. But I think this movie is also about our relationship with sensationalism, as we experience it through voyeurism, which, in a modern society, that's often how we do experience fear, is more just through the illusion of it. Often alien invasion films, as we've seen them through the decades in Hollywood, they have a plethora of political themes and certainly paranoia associated with it. But I think it's doing this now through a very modern perspective, where we're looking more at the perspective of people who see everything just through their cell phone. It's like everybody sees things through a screen, and this changes how we relate to each other. This changes how we view the world. It changes beliefs. It changes everything. That tarnishes so much of what is important about being present, what is authentic. And as we always say, if you can film it, it's not real. And the key is, with these UFOs, you can't look at them with the naked eye or you will get sucked up into it. Don't look directly at it. Just so long as you can get it on camera is the important thing, because that is where the fame comes from. Attention seeking is a big thing here, and I think our characters, for the most part, all have blind spots in this area, especially when it comes to just the social climate and the way that it bends to vanity, and just the idea of we always have cameras on us, which was not common, decades ago. And a character like Daniel Kaluuya, who's, the main character here, he's different from a lot of those people. He and his sister own a horse ranch of a bunch of stunt horses that work in motion pictures, and this is out in California. But his brain clearly operates very much outside of that social media sort of mentality or that attention seeking. He likes to blend more into the background. He's a new kind of cowboy for like an updated type of Western, riding that horse into the sunset, and he is taciturn and he's very stoic, and he kind of, a lot of the echoes of John Wayne maybe in a movie like The Searchers, the melancholy he has. And it's his ideas that ultimately become the important ones in the third act of the film, fighting smoke and mirrors with smoke and mirrors, essentially. I just love Daniel Kaluuya as an actor. He has the most extraordinary big round eyes, and there's so much expression in them, and he knows exactly how to be expressive. I think somebody like that could easily be overly expressive, and yet he's so subtle. I think when you just have a camera on you for a really long period where you're not saying anything, it's very hard to seem natural and to seem compelling without, you know, just going completely flat. But Peele can keep the camera on Kaluuya's face for a long period, and you don't need to see anything that's happening outside of that. I also think he has great humor, but again, super, super subtle. His delivery of the title, just the line, "Nope," is fantastic. It's perfectly delivered and hilarious. I think there's some very good performances in the film, but I don't think anybody is quite on his level of acting, and I think it's a credit to Peele for finding this person and really giving them that cinematic weight, especially, you know, initially with Get Out. I do like Peele, even though I think he's a little bit scatterbrained at times. I think he just has a really great knack for suspense and merging very specific emotions, the emotions of like building to the climax of a punchline, like comic relief, and combining that with terror, with fear. I also think he has a lot of confidence when it comes to the world building, and he really gives us plenty of time as an audience to ruminate in the atmosphere. And I think that's just really something that is lacking in films today, just proper setup of a world. I think there are a lot of great images here, but again, there are seeds planted so that they can be effective later. There is a flashback sequence in this that I think is probably really the only thing that really is frightening in the film, and it's, I think, the best thing in it. It's just so effective. It's a sitcom taping, and it involves a chimpanzee. I will try not to spoil it for you, but I think it really expresses the core themes of this film in a way that is really eerie and really forward. And just the way that he creates this particular world, I love just the way everything looks. That's another thing that just really struck me about the film, is just how they created this like backlot sort of feel, this behind the scenes look at Hollywood, having this ranch full of stunt horses and all these like amusement parks with chip paint and like alien dolls with like Aaron Copland style music, playing like Western music but on like really bad speakers. It's creepy. It's like wax museums of the past that are like melting in the sun, and it's laced with all this like pop culture trans fats and saturated fats and sugars, and it's just, ugh, I don't know, we're just ingesting it. And for me, the aspect of like audience spectacle and all of that culminates in a really amazing sequence with Stephen Ewan, where he's performing for the crowd, and then that performance becomes reality. But seeing performance blend into the terror is a wonderful thing, and we get a bigger picture of what's happening. It resonates thematically, and it just has that great summer feeling of being drawn to something like the dinosaur park in Jurassic Park, or like the beaches on July 4th in Jaws, and so on. But these have the Jordan Peele touch, so they are charming, but also a bit off, a bit quirky, haunting. But I just love the feeling, like it's almost like subliminal flashes of like 1950s sci-fi movies that I really love, or 1970s Steven Spielberg type of blockbusters. And I even thought about movies like Signs by M. Night Shyamalan, which, I don't know, I think that movie is fun as hell, but it's also really dumb, and I think Nope, especially in the third act, has its share of dumb moments as well. It has a similar sort of conclusion that does feel anticlimactic and really silly after so much has been built up in such a serious way. But then again, I guess there is a similar kind of climax and then deflating the tension in a movie like Jaws, but I think in Jaws, it's perfect. And as somebody who really loves the Western genre, it is satisfying to see kind of like an updated version of those Western images, like those archetypes, but it has a new type of energy here. It's a new voice, and I admit, seeing Daniel Kaluuya, you know, like riding on the horse with that Aaron Copland style music, you know, I can't help but get a smirk on my face. Though when I do think of like the great alien invasion films, whether it's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind or The Day the Earth Stood Still, whatever, I think those work better just because I feel like they were thought through a lot better. The characters here can be really fun, and they're well played for sure, and they have distinct personalities and they bounce off each other in great ways, I think, but I don't think that the characters grow in a way that is satisfying for me. I would have liked to see maybe a scene or two in the second or third acts where we really get to build some of that camaraderie and build some of the emotion between the characters, especially as the stakes get higher. But I don't think it's just that. I actually struggle with the majority of Jordan Peele protagonists and characters just because I feel like he's more interested in creating archetypes rather than characters. He's not really allowing for a lot of that authenticity to just kind of exist on the page. It's almost like he feels this sort of responsibility to create kind of like a social commentary of sorts, and he's thinking about that before he's thinking about the actual character. And I think that's something that he really needs to work on. Think about the characters as people and how they relate to the world around them, and not in this sort of like this extra sort of context, just because it's never really clicked in place for me. I just think things aren't quite coming together in a way that could really make this movie excel. I think he is really good, like I said, at reining in the humor and the satire so it's not clashing with the terror, but yet it's still not quite coming alive. The tension just feels a little bit ubiquitous. It's kind of all over the place, and I'm not sure why this movie is divided into chapters the way it is. I think that kind of makes the tension feel maybe a little less seamless for starters. And it just feels kind of misguided. I think there's a different type of framework to be had there. And a lot of what we are expecting from these aliens just doesn't deliver, ultimately. The way they talk about it, you're expecting some sort of, creativity there, and you're expecting, especially the way they talk about this animalistic nature, I don't get a sense of that brutality or anything. Certainly there is that brutal kind of animalistic quality in the chimpanzee sequence that I mentioned earlier. That is my favorite thing in the movie, but I wanted to see that carry forward in a grander way in the third act. But yes, overall, I do think there is a lot of charm, and if you like Jordan Peele, you're gonna find things to admire in this film. He is continuing to develop, and if you really like those, like I said, those Spielberg type of movies, like the big kind of blockbuster spectacle summer movies, you're gonna really enjoy this because it certainly reminds you of that. It gives you that kind of warmth. I'm just wanting Jordan Peele to return to something that feels a little more soulful. And it's not like I want the social commentary and the meta aspects to completely disappear. Those things often can be subconscious, I think, but I want them to be integrated more in an authentic way and just create a little bit more flow here. But yeah, he's a fun director. This is a fun movie, and yeah, I think it's certainly one to see. You'll enjoy. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Welcome to the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.